And I believe we're rolling. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Live from My Mother's Basement with yours truly, comedian Mike Marino. I'm so happy to be doing this recording because one of my favorite people in the world, especially here in New Jersey, who loves to talk about the fact that he is very pro Rutgers, because that's where he went to college, and he's still an alumni, and the whole 9 yards. We're going to hear all about it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cal Schwartz.
Hello, I tip my hat to you.
Tip it
I
to me.
very rarely tip my hat, but I'm tipping it to you, Mike Marino.
You know, it's great. You know, of course, we're doing a pre-record, and you don't hear the audience yell, scream, and cheer. But I've been on stage so many times with you and the audience that we can hear it together right now, can't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
I hear it.
So thank you so much for driving up north from South Jersey. And thank you for coming and hanging out in the basement with me to chit-chat a little bit, and let's see what's going on in your world. Ladies and gentlemen, Cal Schwartz actually just said to me before we started recording that I should be honored because I'm the third person he's seen since the pandemic.
Yeah.
That is
that
is
true.
unbelievable.
No, but it's I'm I'm allergic. A lot of people get sick from COVID. I'm also
Oh.
allergic to it,
All right.
so I just don't want to get it. So because of that, I just stay in my house.
Well, let's talk about that up front because I have been calling you. I have been doing shows since the pandemic slowed down, or now that it turned into monkeypox. What happened? I mean, COVID hit. I was in California. I locked myself into my apartment out there, and that was it. Like everybody else, you think, okay, it's going to be a couple weeks, couple days, couple months, and then you realize, wait a minute, this just destroyed my life. And everywhere I went,
Yes.
and all the people I knew, I don't see and I don't go. And that was just hell. And I hope we don't have to go through that hell again. Hopefully, we're really out of the hell. I really don't even know.
And you know what? Nobody knows. I get a. It's not funny, but I get a kick every other day. They're coming out with something. Oh, well, we didn't know this about COVID. I mean, it's only been around 3 years. You know, polio's been around for 50, 60 years. It's coming back.
Is it?
But the point being, they don't know. They don't know. It's kind of like in 25 or 30 years, somebody's going to come along and they're finally going to say that cigarette smoking is good for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Like marijuana.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what gotta be careful because the sound really gets picked up when you touch this
Okay.
bar. What happened? Pandemic hit. You went into hiding.
I went into
completely,
hiding.
like a bear.
Correct. Complete hiding. It was because I was going to become a grandfather and I wanted to be extra specially careful. And then, yeah, I guess out of desperation, and you're stuck in your house for 6 months, I got to be really good friends with my wife. I mean,
Right.
I really got to know her because
Is that right?
we're stuck, you know. And
Is that right? Are you being funny? I mean, you're
teasing.
married for a long time.
I'm trying to be funny.
All right.
I'm trying to pick up the ambiance here in the basement, and I'm trying to be funny.
You became friendly with your wife.
Well, it's, you know, we're thrown together. So we had different zones, and the kitchen was the neutral zone.
Right.
And I kind of squirreled myself away in my little office. And then I decided, it kind of all landed in my lap. I said, why don't I, because you know, I was doing stuff for NJ Discover. I'm a journalist. Why don't I interview some people on Zoom? And it was great. And by the way, you know, you could talk about this for a long time. It's an addiction. You just never want to leave the house. So I've been doing this for 2 years. I've done 170 interviews worldwide. And I get asked all the time, you want to do this, do this. And by the way, one of my other times I left the house was to come see you in Carteret.
Oh, that's right. We did the Carteret Park.
Yes.
That was in like October of last year.
Yeah, that was huge. I got out of the house first time in a year to come see you because I miss seeing you, and that was huge for me. So, but it's I don't know what it's doing to us as a species.
Yeah. I don't feel like a human anymore.
Yeah,
I'm a robot.
Right. I mean, and I don't have a mask on, and I'm rubbing shoulders with you. I mean, this is.
I've been cleared many times. I have home tests. I get tested every Tuesday because normally when we do
Right.
the show, it's Tuesday nights live at 8 o'clock. So I get tested Tatiana, who produces the show, she makes sure everybody gets
she's-
tested before they get on the show, and everything is legal, and you sign your paperwork and the whole 9 yards, because you have to. And we insist on it, and maybe someday we won't have to, but for now, that's the way it is, because who knows who's going to give anything to anybody, and it's not going to happen here. So I get checked. I have to get checked all the time. I get checked every Monday, and then when we go on the cruise ships, you have to get checked
Right.
2 days before you go on the ship. And then there's some comedy clubs, they want you to get checked before you get there.
Wow.
So you just do what you're supposed to do. I've been vaccinated, I've been boosted, and I'm ready to roll. So if I got to get checked, I get checked.
Right.
And it's very easy now. There doesn't seem to be long lines. You go to a CVS, you're in and you're out. They swab you, and away you go. I have the test kits upstairs too, and whatever I got to do to make my guest comfortable, and whatever the guest has to do to make me comfortable and my producer comfortable, and then away we go. It's not that big of a deal. Anybody could do it.
It's the way of life.
We're actually all in the Screen Actors Guild too. It's a whole big thing. I was supposed to work on a movie, but because I got COVID the week before and I didn't quarantine for the right amount of days, I couldn't even do the movie.
Wow.
So you can imagine when you're all booked up to do a movie, and then the day comes and they say, go to your room. It's not happening. So you stayed in your house,
Stayed in my house.
and for fun, you got online and you created your show, but
Yeah.
your show was going before the COVID, right?
No, all was a byproduct of COVID, because I couldn't.
But you
I
were
had-
with NJ Discover.
Yes, and we had the TV show which you were on. You were
Yeah.
on you were on our first TV show.
Oh, is that right?
You were on with Tim Wright, the NFL football player from the Patriots.
That's right. And he let us wear those big rings.
Yes, those wings that weighed 10
Tim,
pounds.
Wow, yes. So who was Tim Wright again?
Tim Wright played obviously for football for Rutgers,
Right.
and then he went down with Coach Schiano when Schiano took over Tampa Bay. He was a wide receiver, and then he went up to the Patriots and played for the Patriots when they won a Super Bowl. His locker was right next to Tom Brady, but I can't tell you any stories because he never told me any stories.
Well, I remember him being on the show. I do
Yeah,
remember
and he
him
was
being
with
there.
you, and that was our very first show.
And we got to try on Super Bowl rings.
Oh, those were amazing because the owner of the Patriots, Kraft, he spent a lot of money, and he had these monstrous rings above and beyond what normal Super Bowl rings look like.
I remember that the ring was bigger than my thumb. I couldn't
It's-
even get it on.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And that was our first show, and we did that for 5-6 years. It was great. It was a lot of fun. So I was like, what am I going to do? I have to do something.
Well, let's rewind before we find out what you did do
All right,
during the
rewind.
pandemic. Let's
Okay.
rewind. How did we meet? Tell everybody.
So it's almost our anniversary, by the way.
Right, by the way.
It was 11 years ago as I began my journalism career with NJ Discover and a couple of magazines here in Jersey. There was the first Asbury Park Comedy Festival, UDMC. And
I don't think I would have been the MC.
I think you were. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was the first comedy festival. There was the first comedy festival. I'm trying to remember who.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too.
It was at the Paramount Theater.
Sure, the Paramount Theater, legendary theater in Asbury Park, New Jersey, built 1929, a replica of Grand Central Station in New York City, same architect. This theater is legendary. Some of the first comedians to play there was the Marx Brothers and Lou and Abbott, Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, Bud and Lou.
Then, of course, Sinatra and you name it. And then it had its fall from grace in the 70s, was condemned for a very long time, I think 20 years. I went in there in 2007 to put on a big concert, and it was successful, and we kept on going. Now it's an unbelievable town, and you got to have a lot of money to live there.
A lot of money.
A lot of money. The theater hasn't even been open in quite some time now because of the pandemic, but
Right.
that's where we met.
Yep.
And
We took a picture. That's our first picture together. Hold it up. That was right after the concert.
That's on the streets of Asbury Park. That's
Yeah.
right across from the Paramount, and across the street from, I can see in the background, that is what is now a very fancy hotel, but then wasn't so fancy. But before that was even really, really fancy when legendary people used to stay here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm drawing a blank on it. What's it called? Berkeley?
Carteret.
Berkeley Carteret. Berkeley Carteret, which had a lot of movie stars stay there, and there was a rumor that at one time, who was going to buy it? Michael Jackson and
Wow.
the Man in Black. See that train coming
Oh,
across
Johnny
the-
Cash?
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash.
Supposedly Johnny Cash's ghost is in the Berkeley Carteret. So anyway, that's where I met Cal, and that's when they were having the first annual Asbury Park Comedy Festival, produced and put on by
Nick Clements.
Nick Clements. Nick Clements is the son of
Clarence Clements.
Clarence Clements, and Clarence Clements is
The big man.
the big man. For those of you who don't know, the big man was the saxophone player in the world famous E Street Band, and the front man on that was Bruce Springsteen.
Bruce Springsteen.
So we're all fans of Bruce and the E Street Band, and it was nice to be part of that. And then it went on to become part of the Light of Day, which I got to meet everybody but
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen, which is really sad. Aren't you friends with Vinny Mad Dog Lopez, right?
Yeah, sure. From that moment, not that you were the catalyst, but from that moment, having met you, and that was a big thing for me because I'd never met anybody famous. So I'm serious. So I met you, and then I kind of drifted into the world of Asbury Park, music, film.
Is that right?
Yeah, I swear. That was literally
I-
the first night of my baptism. Is that a
Baptism. He was baptized,
I was
into
baptized.
Asbury Park.
I
But
was
wait a minute,
baptized.
I think I might throw something else out here. Didn't we meet first because of?
Well, it was to raise money for Kitty Bruce's.
Oh, okay. So it was the same show.
It was the same show.
All right. So the show we met, okay, was the Asbury Park Comedy Festival to raise money for
Kitty Bruce had that house, Lenny's house.
Lenny's house. Lenny Bruce, famous comedian from back in the 50s and 60s. And Kitty Bruce was there, and we got to meet Kitty and so on and so forth. And then eventually we'll talk about this too, that we bumped into Ronnie Marmo, who now tours the world in a show called I'm Not a Comedian, I'm Lenny Bruce, which I've seen 10 times. It's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Have you seen it?
Twice.
Dynamite.
I actually saw it opening night.
Where?
In the city. At that, I forgot what it's called.
It's like in the Village.
It was on like 32nd Street, and it was all the way. And it wasn't in the Village. It was 32nd Street.
Oh.
And I knew it was coming because I have this thing with Ronnie, and I love Lenny Bruce, obsessively so. And so I got a table right, like almost on the stage, by the toilet seat.
You got to explain that. There's a toilet on stage, and that's not the toilet in the room. There's
no.
a toilet on stage where he starts the play
Yeah.
and ends the play.
Yeah.
Because supposedly that's where he overdosed
Lenny
on the
overdosed
toilet,
on the toilet.
and he fell and I don't know, shit himself or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But let's go back even before we met in
Okay.
Asbury Park.
Okay.
You're a Jersey boy, right?
Jersey boy, 100%.
Born and raised down the shore. Where?
Well, actually, I started to tell you this, and you stopped me before we went on air.
All right.
And I've known you 11 years, and you're a Belmar guy,
Right.
right? But not too many people know this, but I'm going to make a public announcement live from the basement. I was conceived in Belmar. How many people have
It's
told
a
you
party
that?
town.
That's a party town.
It's a party town.
But I was conceived, and I'm going to give my age away, but what the hell, I was my parents were so happy. They lived in Newark. I'm a Newark boy, and they lived in Newark, and Franklin Roosevelt got reelected for his 4th term. So they were very poor. They had no money, but they loved Belmar. So they took whatever change they had, and they came down to an old hotel. It was on First and Ocean, called the Buena Vista, before your time, way before your time.
First and Ocean?
Yeah, it was.
Is that the
big,
White House now?
No, I don't know. It's gone, but it was a big. It was like 4 It was
Yes.
a huge hotel for those days, and they stayed in the attic. They stayed in the attic. 'cause
The
that's
cheap
all
rooms.
Cheap rooms, and it's funny. My mother told me this like 6 months before she passed. We were sitting down in Florida talking. She told me the whole story. I kept on saying, I don't want to hear this. She said we walked on the beach. We had a drink. Came back to the hotel, and then 9 months later you arrived. And that's
Were they married?
Yeah, sure.
They were married
Oh,
when they
sure.
went down?
They didn't mess around in those days.
I'm sure in those days there was no messing around,
No.
but they were married, so they could mess around. And the funniest thing is the Belmar was such a unbelievable town. All the beach towns on the Jersey Shore really are unbelievable. Whether you go to Atlantic City, Wildwood, Long Beach Island, there's so much to do. There's so much to see. And they shove it all in 3 months and we make it happen.
Yeah.
And to go to Belmar and stay in one of these old classic hotels, and people were going to the beach, getting a sunburn, going to get a cocktail, and then having sex. That was the Jersey Shore.
That's right. Still is.
It still is.
Still
Probably
is.
worse now than ever.
Still is.
But he's a product of the Jersey Shore.
I'm a product of
Belmar.
the Jersey Shore.
All right.
Absolutely. Yep.
So then,
Went to, you want my real fast? I went to Rutgers. And
you got a big affection for Rutgers. I know
Yeah.
every time I talk to you, you got the Rutgers hat on,
Yeah.
you're wearing a red shirt. You work at Rutgers still, right?
I taught there for 3 years ago for a semester.
That's great.
At 74, they came to me, would you like to teach?
Was it fun?
It was an unbelievable experience.
When you went back to the school, did you walk down the halls like where you were when you were in college?
Well, where I was, I actually went to pharmacy school in Newark, so that's gone with the
Oh,
wind.
it's not there?
No, they moved. As a matter of fact, I'm living history. You're sitting next to living history. I was the last class to graduate from Rutgers Pharmacy School in Newark.
So it's Rutgers Pharmacy School?
Correct.
Did you have to go for 4 years?
Actually, I went for 6+ years because there was this thing going on in Southeast Asia at the time, and I developed an allergy to rice patties. So it's called Vietnam. So, So the longer you stay in school, the less you.
Let it sink in. I didn't
let
get
it
that right
marinate.
away. Let it marinate.
Let it marinate.
I didn't even catch that right away.
I say allergy to rice patties. I probably did. And so the longer
Holy
you stay in school,
shit.
the longer you don't have to worry about getting drafted.
So the campus for this particular...
It was separate from the Rutgers Newark campus. The pharmacy school was an old building from 100+ years ago. It was 2 miles away from downtown Newark in a little building, 2-story building, across the street from a cemetery where the Red Badge Courage writer is buried. But it was on Broadway, and it was all by itself, and that's where I went.
But you didn't get to go to the big campus and be part of all of that?
No, and it's funny because
Like where the football games are?
I had never been to Rutgers campus in New Brunswick up until 25 years ago, long after I graduated, when I took my son when he was 10 to a football game. It was the first time on campus. The irony is I have I'm a little OCD, so when I discovered the Rutgers campus, I went from my first time in one football game to some years later being on campus 160 times a year.
Yeah, because
OCD.
since I met you, that's what you were always talking about. Rutgers,
Everything
going to
you did.
Rutgers, alumni. Hey,
Yep.
I have a shirt. You gave me a shirt.
Yep.
And then you were going over there to teach. Well, that's really, really great. I think it's fantastic that you're part of the Asbury Park scene now.
Yeah.
You know all those different people.
It's
We have a lot
wonderful.
of friends in common. In
Vinny's
fact,
the best.
Vinny Pastore.
Yep.
We all met together.
All of
The
them.
E Street Band. Vinny Mad Dog Lopez was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for being the original drummer in the E Street Band. Tim McClune, Debbie DeLise
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the
yeah.
Wonder Bar.
Yes.
These are all legendary classic people who are in the Asbury Park,
Yeah.
I don't know, scene. I felt like I became part of it because I was performing there, and I was happy about all of that. And then recently we all lost a friend. We can mention that. How did I just lose his name all of a sudden? Maybe I'm not supposed to mention it. Sammy Boyd.
Yeah.
Sammy Boyd is a
I just
a
saw
producer.
that the other night.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Did you know him?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right?
Sure.
He produced, I think, 3 of my shows. He produced a bunch of things my brother Paul did. But he was very well known in Asbury Park for producing a lot of shows at the Paramount and at the Convention Hall. And I think the number one thing he was known for was producing, what's her name? famous singer.
Oh, oh shoot! I can't.
I'm pretty sure she's in 20 Feet from Fame, the movie that won an Oscar.
I can't remember.
Ah, man, it's going to come to us a little later.
Yeah, I met him so many times.
She was a famous backup singer, and then she became a hit singer, mostly known for a Christmas song that she puts out every year.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Darlene.
shit. Darlene Love.
Yes.
Darlene
yes,
Love.
Yes.
So it's nice to know all these people, and it's very sad about Sammy Boyd. One of the coolest things I ever heard came from his mouth. It's when I did the Paramount, and they did that thing called Up Close and Personal, and they made me perform on the stage in reverse. So with the 300 people were on stage with me rather than 1,600 people in the front. And when the show was over, we all went to the Wonder Bar, and he was talking with Chris Famiamo, who's the overall producer at the Paramount and the stages. And he said, "Man, we could have did 3 shows."
Wow.
I'm like, I'm standing right here. I would love to have done 3. So that's sad, but it's cool that we've been part of all of this. And so tell us more stories about coming up in the pharmaceutical age.
Well,
when drugs might have been where people would came and saw you, not a CVS person who you don't even see the people.
Right. There were no chains basically when I was a pharmacist.
You went
But-
to Joe's Pharmacy.
Yeah, everything was all personalized, and then I actually started working for a chain reluctantly, but that's just the way it worked out. I didn't like it, and then I decided I didn't really like the profession.
Really?
Yeah, because it didn't test the 6 years of schooling enough, and there wasn't enough challenges. So my poor wife, she had to endure so much. I yelled one morning to her, "I'm quitting my profession," and I quit. And actually, I went to the Edison Valley Playhouse, and that's it's convoluted that's how I kind of met Ronnie Marmo some years later. I thought I'd become an actor.
Oh, okay.
So I quit my profession of pharmacy after 12 years, and that morning that I quit, the Edison Valley Playhouse was having tryouts for Frankenstein. It was a play that opened and closed on Broadway in one.
Frankenstein was a play?
It was a play, but it was a different play. The creature had most of the lines. You wanted to get inside his head to see how he felt being put together by all these different body parts. So that was the thing, and I figured it was divine intervention because I quit my profession, and now there's an opportunity for me to become an actor.
Right.
So I went up to the Edison Valley Playhouse, and I auditioned for the play. I'm still waiting to hear. That was 1981. I haven't heard yet. I guess I didn't get the part.
Well, they're going a different way.
So I didn't get the part, and then 6 months later, I drifted into eyewear sales of all things because I was desperate. I needed to work. I was a young married guy, and I wound up working for Luxottica for 25 years. They own LensCrafters and Pearl and Ray-Ban and everything, and my boss, whom I love, the father and son, Del Vecchio, it was 25 marvelous, wonderful years. It filled my head with stuff. And they went on to become the richest Italians in the world. And I drank Grappa with him. And Gnocchi.
And Gnocchi?
Gnocchi and Grappa.
Grappa is disgusting.
Tough stuff.
So it's tough stuff, man.
But when you want to redo your basement,
Yeah.
and you want to take the paint off the walls,
Right.
Grappa.
Grappa.
Oh, yeah.
It'll kill you.
Oh, Grappa. But then that was my life and story, and they were so big, and it was wonderful working for that knowledge. And he's and the son Claudio, who I was always close with, gave me this award. I showed you this before on air.
Let's see.
It's his company, and they gave me this. It's kind of like the Academy Award. And you want to read the inscription? This was at a national sales meeting, and they handed me this award.
The award says, tallest Burdell rep to ever weasel into a motion picture, presented to Carol Schwartz. There's your Oscar.
That's my Oscar. And by the way, I'm very proud of this. It sits on my desk to this day. What's the story behind that? I went to see them filming One True Thing with Meryl Streep, William Hurt, Renee Zellweger, major motion picture up in
Right.
Maplewood,
Right.
and we couldn't really get on the set because everything was blocked off. But then they were letting people go through before they started filming. It was a Christmas scene. They're making snow. They had a machine.
Right.
And so they let, I was there with my sister, so they let people go get a slice of pizza. So we went in, and they weren't doing anything yet, and we went in, and I say we masticated. It's a terrible word, but it means we chewed. We chewed this slice of pizza for 2 hours. We set a New Jersey record. Nobody's ever chewed one slice of pizza for 2 hours.
That's milking
So
it.
You're looking at right here. And when we were done chewing that one slice, my sister and I walked out, and we were just standing under the old Maplewood Theater marquee, an old Art Deco thing, and I'm just watching it. It's so interesting, behind the scenes and getting ready to shoot a scene in the snow, and suddenly I feel there's a presence next to me, and I look, and it's Meryl Streep standing right next to me, and then William Hurt and Renee Zellweger and Carl Franklin, the director. And now I was a little shyer back in those days, so it took a lot of energy to get me to say something there. I mean, how can I not say something? So I started to say how much I admired, And while I was chatting with her, and it wasn't a long chat, a production assistant saw me talking to her, and he came over to me and said, "We have to place you now." So I said, "Okay, sure." He's just assumed I was part of that entourage.
Right.
And he took us right on the set, me and my sister. And he said, everything you have to do. I said, well, why don't you just go over it again? And he went over it again. He disappeared, and we were kind of in the back. It was like a major motion picture. She was nominated for Academy Award for that. And when I processed what was happening, I'm going to be and I was kind of in the back. I was an extra, obviously, and there were lots of people around. I said, well, you know what? What the hell? And you actually see me in the movie, kind of pushing my way up front. They never cut it out. And I'm in, and the funny thing about that is when my son started dating Delilah, his wife, and they were just dating, and I think we might have met once or twice, but she was home one Saturday morning watching One True Thing, and she picks up the phone and calls my son and says, it's the funniest thing, I'm watching this movie with Meryl Streep and William Hurt, who passed away recently. And she said, I could swear there's a guy there that looks like your father. So my son said, yeah, that is my father. So, anyway.
You're a star.
Please.
If you remember some time ago, we were shooting a pilot called Reconstructing Jersey.
Yeah.
And that's why I invited you down to come and be part of it, because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And one of the first shots was in Krankel's Food Stores on Route 35 in Neptune. Now, we're all good friends with George Krankel, and that's when I started wearing this shirt, and that's why I put this shirt on for today's podcast, because they're known for having pork roll, egg, and cheese on a hard roll, and they put it in my name. Now, I don't know how old this shirt is. This shirt's got to be maybe 10 years old, but the Mike Marino sandwich at Krankel's Day Night Food Store. This is what I think one of the first sponsors I've ever had in my entire life.
That's great.
Something like that. So I remember when we went down there to film, and I have a lot of pictures of you in the behind the scenes and then hanging out with everybody. So I'm looking at these other pictures too. So let's show everybody. This picture, you could go ahead and tell everybody where this is from.
So this, you invited me to go with you. You were being interviewed at PBS Studios.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story. It's not funny, but so you invited me to go, and I was thrilled. You were being interviewed by Steve Adubato for his talk show, and there was another comedian there, Rich Voss.
Yes.
And also that day was Bobby Rydell.
Yes. Who recently passed away. And while you were being interviewed, I was sitting, and Bobby had come in, because they were doing multiple interviews, and I'm sitting there. I took a picture with him. Of course, I love doing that stuff. And then he takes out 2 packs of cigarettes. Oh, did he? I didn't see this.
hand.
I didn't see this. I guess I was being.
I kept my mouth shut, but I knew he had heart problems, and he takes out 2 packs of cigarettes. He lights up one, and
it's amazing. We're losing a lot of people in this world, but. I remember Bobby Rydell came in, and he remembered me because I had worked with him with Dina Martin, and we did a show with also Joe Piscopo. it's kind of amazing how all this comes around, because years ago this would seem impossible to achieve. Now we're actually friends with all these people,
yeah.
and now we're actually saddened that they're passing away. So here's another picture that was right here in this basement. Go ahead, tell us about that one. This is great.
Well, that was a fabulous, fabulous night. This was a collection of Mike Marino fans.
Yes.
You were doing your show, and we were all in the basement hanging out. And of course, I have a great friendship with Rich.
The singer.
Yeah.
There was there's a sponsor here, and again, sad to say, we lost another friend in this photograph. Maybe this was the day we were having her on the show.
And it was Rich, Marianne. He's in real estate, and she passed right after that picture.
Angela, was it Angela?
Yeah, Angelica with a P. I forget her last name.
She was maybe yeah, Angelique Pillay. I have her album over there. She was on the show. We were interviewing her. She was talking all about her career, and I think she was 32 years old, and she passed. We won't even say how. But,
no, it's not. It's not. You know, you
Angela, Angel. Why I can't.
Angelica Pillay.
Anyway, if you look in the archives of the Mike Marino show, you'll see she's on the show live from my mother's basement.
Yeah.
So tell us what else was going on, because I want to talk to you about your book. Now, I have your book. Unfortunately, I didn't read it.
That's all right.
It's a very thick book, so let's go to the book.
Well, it's called Vichy Water, but this is, I just finished my second novel, in part because of the pandemic.
Right.
So, and I'm now looking for an agent. And it's probably one of the most detestable things on earth, an agent.
Do you need it?
No.
I go through agents every other week.
It's, do I? No, ultimately, and I knew when I finished, it's called There's a Tortoise in My Hair, semicolon, The Journey to Spirit, because I'm very spiritual.
Yeah, okay.
I could tell you stories, not now, but very spiritual, and it's funny, this book, I wrote, my first novel, Vichy Water, I wrote, the idea came into my head 16, 17 years ago, when I got done watching Casablanca, Vichy Water. It's based on having watched Casablanca.
Really?
And this is the bottle of Vichy Water. I got to show you this. And I always knew that somebody up there put that novel into my head. I knew it. And these are two characters on a bench in a train station in Maplewood, where I used to live. And it's pretty cool. And that image came into my head also. But I knew somebody up there shoved this in my head, because I never wrote anything in my life. And then a few years ago, I found out, I realized who this spirit was in my head. And this is so cool. And I found this picture. I realized it's my grandfather, who I never knew. He died in 1939. And this is serious. It's not funny. Maybe it is. But anyway, I wrote this book, and for 10 years I knew somebody up there stuck it in my head for a reason. I never knew the reason. And the image of the cover stuck in my head. And then when I realized it was my grandfather, I found the one and only picture of my grandfather. I'm showing you. 1902, Newark, New Jersey, Springfield Avenue. And that's my grandfather, and that's that bottle of water.
Oh, no kid.
No kidding.
That's almost creepy.
It's very creepy. And every time I show that to my wife, she kind of freaks out.
It's such a classic-looking picture. Let's show everybody.
Yeah, that's my grandfather's, on the right there, and that bottle of water on that table is the cover of my novel.
And so you put the cover of this novel together before you saw this picture?
Correct. This was already done.
Hold on a minute.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to go out and explain things to, let's say, me.
Okay.
I don't even know what Vichy water is.
It's French mineral water.
Okay, so
like French
mineral water. He creates this cover of this book. The book, he's saying, is stemmed because he watched the movie Casablanca. And then he finds the only picture of his grandfather, and if you look closely, he has a bottle of the Vichy water That's some creepy shit.
Creepy.
Good for
creepy,
you.
Creepy, creepy, creepy. So all this stuff happens, and hours. So I decided to tell the story, and that's why I wrote my second novel. There's a tortoise in my hair. My hair.
What does that mean?
It means the main character. It's kind of an autobiography, but I made up a lot of stuff, so it's really fiction, but it's not. Um,
Well, that's what stand-up is. Stand-up is reality, but it's
Yeah.
exaggerated
yeah,
or performed in a way that it seems like it's exaggerated.
I just had to tell that.
I think
story.
it's great. I wish I could sit down and write a book that came out that thick. That is a thick-ass book.
Yeah, it is, and the one I finished now is even thicker.
What is those other things over there? He came prepared for this interview.
Well, I have all these. If you want to, part of my journalism and my spirituality is I've done, and because of Danny Coleman. Do you know? You know, sure. Because of Danny Coleman, I got involved in paranormal investigations. Even though he's a music DJ, it was a nephew, and we started doing. I started doing with Tara Jean, NJ Discover, paranormal investigations. And I always tell people I'm just a regular guy. You know, I go to football, basketball games, love pizza. This is way too long a story to tell now, unless you want to go for 2 or 3 hours. But anyway, one of our paranormal investigations, and this was the first one I ever did. Danny. We had 8 or 9 of us in a basement in an old abandoned bank building in Bordentown, and Danny's nephew's fiance took a picture in the basement because we were there because we had heard it was haunted.
Right.
So she took this picture in the basement. There's nothing there. It's just an empty basement in this 1850s bank building. And then she takes another picture 4 seconds later, and look what's there, a white orb.
Right.
It's a ghost. No photoshopping, no dust on the lens. Kind of haunting.
Yeah. Well, we're going to show this to everybody. I'm a big fan of ghost stories, movies, paranormal.
Okay.
I like the poltergeist. I like to believe of the Walking Dead. I'd like to believe that my mom's in this house. I really think she is.
Probably she is.
Has things to say every once in a while. She'll move stuff. But when you go into the basement of these old buildings, and you can tell by this thing here, it's like fallout shelter.
That's right. That's exactly right.
In case the
I'm surprised
planes.
you don't have one down here in the basement.
Yeah, right.
I'm looking.
It makes you want to know, is there a ghost? Like when we go over to the Paramount and you go backstage
by the
and you
way.
go into those creepy places
Yeah.
and you know that there is a ghost in there. So here's a picture of the basement that he's talking about, Bordentown. So let's say they had some kind of a seance. And then how much later was
4
it?
seconds.
4 seconds, here comes the ghost. See it? I'll give you $1,000 to sleep there. That is some creepy shit. But you know there's going to be people who have to play the devil's advocate and say, oh, come on now. Maybe somebody just scratched the lens.
No. You know, the story behind this, how we wound up going there, was the nephew of Danny Coleman, who has a new studio and all.
Paranormal guy?
Yep. The nephew, him and his partner were actually building a pizza place in that old, it was called The Vault, and it was a pizza place, and they needed to get a certificate of occupancy, so they called 2 cops and 2 firemen had to come in and inspect. So these guys went into this old deserted 1850 building. It was in the middle of winter, no lights, no electricity, and the 6 of them walked in, and then they walked down the stairs to the basement, and there were all kinds of boxes obstructing the passage. So this guy, Danny's nephew, moved all the boxes away, and the 2 cops, the 2 firemen, they went down and they inspected all the electrical stuff and the fuse box and all that stuff. And they were there 5-10 minutes and whatever. And then they came back, all 6 of them, to walk up the stairs, and all the boxes that were blocking, that were moved, were back, blocking the stairs.
That's some creepy shit, man. That's what they make movies of. If you remember when we were hanging around at the Paramount in Asbury Park, which is known to be haunted because supposedly in the 1930s, some flappers during a live performance were getting changed and they burned and died, or kids died, or whatever the story is. So they have all these dressing rooms that have been remodeled and repainted, except for two, and supposedly that's where the people died. So the story goes they painted it, and then they went back the next day, and it was unpainted, and it still looked like it was burnt. Now, I never saw that, but that would scare the shit out of me. I would never go there again. But I have been in there, and I saw how they leave the dolls,
Oof.
and the dolls are
Oof.
supposed to keep the kids happy. And paranormal people have been in there. So there's like 12 dressing rooms back there. There's 3 different floors. You're talking about an old, scary-ass building. And then if you remember our friend JJ, who was one of the maintenance guys down there, he took me underneath the Paramount and walked me straight to the Carteret. And I'm like, I can't believe they have an underground walkway from a theater to a hotel, and that had to do with Prohibition and how they were smuggling the alcohol back and forth from the theater to the hotel, and then the actual ocean itself. So when you see pictures of that big ship that was wrecked out there, it actually was moving alcohol from the ship to the theater to the hotel. And you talk about engineering. So I remember when I actually went underneath the theater that one time, you feel the chill, and you're like, uh-oh, there's some creepy ass people down here. So hey, it is what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is, and that was the kind of journalism I was doing for NJ Discover. It was very diverse. You know, it was doing stuff with you, music. You talked about Springsteen. People always died to meet him. I used to work out in a gym a couple of years ago, before the pandemic. And my very first day there, it's so funny. I don't know if I ever told you this. My first day, and I had like 20 exercises to do because I have a bad back and my knees. So here I am in this gym, and I'm doing the adductor machines. and literally, Mike, where this cash register is, which I love, that close to me, I just happened to turn my head and look, and it was so surreal because you don't process, but it's Bruce Springsteen on a machine right next to me.
Oh, right.
So as it turned out, that was his gym. It was my gym, and his schedule for 2 years was my schedule. I was there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10:30, 11:30. So was Bruce, but I wouldn't want to interfere in his world, so I would never bother him.
I've never bothered him. I would always like to say hello to him. I met everybody in the E Street Band but Bruce, and maybe someday that I will. I'm on a path of entertaining, and I'm not stopping. And I hope that we get together again, and you actually get through this pandemic. We all get through this pandemic, and we start doing shows like we were doing the good old days, going backstage, hanging around, meeting everybody, shaking hands, and having some fun, and now doing talk shows. So where can we find you if we look for you on the internet?
I have a nice presence on the internet. I'm on LinkedIn, Calvin Schwartz on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Cal Schwartz. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. And I'm a networker. I love to meet.
What are the
people.
actual handles on Instagram?
It's Earthhood.
Earthhood?
It's Earthhood. I think. I think it's. And you know what? I think it's just Cal Schwartz. Twitter is Earthhood.
So if people look up Cal Schwartz, they'll find you.
Calvin Schwartz, LinkedIn, very professional place.
And where can we buy that book?
The book is. This is on Amazon Kindle.
Amazon Kindle. You can read a book. I wish I could write a book.
By the way, you should.
I'm going to write a book. It's going to be called Letters to My Mother. I'll get on that right away. I have a lot of things going on in my crazy-ass world right now, and you guys can find out what I'm doing, where I'm going on everything at MikeMarino.net. But right now, one more time, Cal, tell everybody where they can find you because we got to get going.
All right. Boy, but time flies, Mike.
It does fly.
My goodness.
Go ahead.
Not to be trite, but time flies. We're just like we're just beginning. You can find me on LinkedIn. I actually have a huge presence on LinkedIn. I'm Calvin Schwartz on LinkedIn. I have my podcast. I have a podcast too called Conversations with Calvin, We the Species, but it's very serious. It's serious stuff. I don't know why. I try to break the mold. I had you on my show.
Yes.
I try to break the mold. I want to, do comedic things, but I keep. It's like Al Pacino in Godfather 3. I keep getting pulled back in.
Right.
Into serious stuff. I don't want to be serious. I want to be unserious. That's why I go to your concerts every time you're here, because I want to laugh, and I can't laugh on my own podcast because everybody's coming in with all this serious stuff. So you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
We're going to keep
That's
on
right.
keep on and on. Listen, let's do a nice shout out and thank my producer Tatiana Bluchel for always doing a wonderful job producing this show and making sure that we do it as best as we can. And I want to tell everybody to stay in touch with me. Don't forget, we're on iTunes, Google, Spotify, Anchor, Italian American Radio out of New York City. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok. Send me some money on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching live from my mother's basement. Remember, let's make America Italian again.
Yes.
The motto is you don't know nothing, you don't see nothing, you don't say nothing. And how do I end every single one of my broadcasts? By always saying the same thing.
Don't take
Ready?
no.
No, we're going to say it together.
Ready together?
Yes.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Don't take no shit from nobody. All right.
Hey,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Mike.
You got it. Hey, folks, I hope you're enjoying watching my podcast live from my mother's basement. We're having a lot of fun, and I'm going to have a lot of great guests on the show in the future. So if you like it, hit like. You could also leave a comment. You could subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch other funny videos. And you could also listen to my podcast on your favorite podcast app like Spotify and iTunes.